All right, let's jump right into it. Thank you, everybody, for attending episode 36. We're creeping up to that 50 mark each day. In our episode 36 and Let's Talk Recruiting, where our fellow peer professionals get together and talk about various topics on recruiting. Today's topic, the next big thing in recruiting, to me is sort of an interesting topic given our situation in the country and in the world where everything's kind of paused. It's going to be really interesting to see how we all come back and what tools or process or kind of like that new start that we all hit when things turn back on. And if it's a quick start or is it a slow start, who knows at this point, but hopefully it'll be more sooner than later in a safe way. So again, today, next big thing in recruiting. We got two panelists that should still be jumping on. If they're not on here, we'll cover for them, but I expect them to be jumping on any moment. We have a bi-coastal panel today. We have Edward Cruz out of New York City, Catherine Amato out of the LA, where I'm also out of, Justin DeLore out of Boston, and Ed Cezanne out of the San Francisco Bay Area. So with that said, Catherine, I'm going to jump to you first and go on the item that you wanted to cover.
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what coast you're on. And one of the areas that I wanted to touch on, so there's several areas that are evolving right now and going to be the latest and greatest, the next big thing in recruiting. And I'm Catherine Amato, by the way, and I'm a recruiting manager over at Guitar Center. And I specifically work for our AV integration business, our business solutions division. And one of the areas that's a more sensitive issue right now is I think companies are really, it's been around for quite a few years, but companies are really rebooting and taking a look at their diversity, equity, inclusion programs. And I think that they're going to get a lot better at it. And they're really rebooting and taking a look at several different areas of their programs, and both using technology as well as the analytics and metrics involved in it. I'm not an expert in this area, but just taking a look at, again, where recruiting is evolving, where it's changing, the next greatest thing in it. I think that we're going to get a lot better at it. And I think we're going to be able to collect the data. And education is one of the most important things. Education and, working with hiring managers, recruiters alike. There's a lot of tools from LinkedIn and training. I think training is really, really important. And reaching out and educating people on the biases and what to look for, what not to look for. And I think also that the requirements in the job postings. So I think education is extremely important, but I think education and the requirement for degrees is going to change a lot. And on certain types of positions, the language in the job postings, several areas in that are, changing, evolving, and I think that there is a lot to be done in this area. And again, I'm not an expert in it, but I think there needs to be the fluidity of more of the, I don't know how to articulate it. I think it's an important area. And again, I'm not as much an expert in it, but I think that that's an area that is going to be, really, really an important area in all companies and corporations. And I think that it's going to be impactful across the nation and everywhere.
Catherine, what are you kind of getting back to? Hey, we're all on kind of a pause for the most part, and then when things starting to come back, the whole pandemic combined with what's going on internally in the country now, and relating that back to recruiting and D&I. From what I've seen, I'm just sort of generalizing the term D&I at this point. I still think it's fine tuning as to exactly what it is going forward. The D&I was kind of like an internal team, and recruiting was kind of designated, hey, we should recruit diversity in here, do that when you can. I sort of see more as we jumpstart again and come back again, that more in sync between the D&I team and the recruiting team kind of going to that same ultimate goal. Have you seen where, or even just your thoughts on possibilities around that deeper connection between D&I and recruiting, or is it one and the same?
I think there's a deeper connection. I mean, I think it should be almost combined in certain ways, because as a talent acquisition professional, you have to be in tune and know where to go and where to search. I mean, you're the beginning of that process, and you're dealing with the hiring managers day to day. So they have their expertise, and they're going out and doing their programs and educating people, and you're still part of that program. I mean, you're dealing with the hiring managers, and you're going out and you're searching, like on LinkedIn. I took a while ago one of the training sessions, and it taught you how to go to certain universities, certain areas that have more prevalence of certain ethnicities that graduated from there, and I had a course on how to go out and find, certain types of individuals and that type of thing. So it's going out and hunting and be able to find, and there's a lot of different resources. There's so many different resources. So you're the beginning of the process in going out there. So I think it needs to be a marriage of, both of them.
Yeah, I was at a company where there's HR and then talent management. And talent management was made up of recruiting, LOD, and diversity and inclusion. And those three leaders in those three departments or divisions or teams really work tightly together. I just think that's kind of the model where you want to do, where you are together in a room weekly. You are working to a greater goal. You got the people coming in, you got the people over here, and then let's develop them skill-wise and managerial-wise, so that team effort and that team definition was one of the best models that I've come across. Yeah,
I think the collaboration definitely has to be there, and you have to work together, and the collaboration is so important in that. Yeah, definitely.
Ed, any comments on D&I, and or is your company addressing it in any way, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
Which Ed are you talking?
Yes.
Ed Sason.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, we typically, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. We typically have had policies around D&I. Now the new buzzword is DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have not had any issues with diversity in our company, so we've not made that a big issue, a big focus. However, in the inclusion part of it, that speaks to how a company culture will create opportunities for people to feel included in decision making, in selection process. We're working on that, but we recognize it is something we're going to all have to pay attention to, but we have not made any drastic changes to what we're doing for inclusion. On the equity side, nobody's ever brought it up, with the BLM movement, talking about how things are inequitable for certain classes of people. That has not affected our company because we have such a diverse population.
That's good news. I want the equity piece. That's another piece where I think, okay, we're still defining that. I've been on the sidelines of a project around determining that. And that's a real interesting discussion to be had for like each and every company internally. It seems to be a different case by case. Edward, thanks for jumping in there. I had you in your attendees. I didn't mean to surprise you by turning your camera on there for you.
No, it's fine. I was having a memory issue because we use Microsoft Teams, and I had Zoom open at the same time. So it was sucking my memory, and I couldn't get the application to run. So I had to close one down. So I apologize. It's a pleasure to meet everyone.
Likewise, yeah. That's a new age problem with all the meetings and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Edward, before we jump over to you, Catherine, are you good on your part for that DNA?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Yeah, I think 2021 is going to be a very interesting year when it comes to DE and I. I'm saying that right. All right, Edward, let's jump over to you.
Sure. It's a pleasure to meet everyone. And so Edward Cruz, I work at Group M. We're a WPP company. I've been at Group M. I'm working on my 6th year here. I'm the global lead for talent acquisition. My areas, my remit includes everything from data science, product development, and technology globally. Been at the firm, like I said, I started as a partner in TA and kind of, really worked my way up. It's been a heck of a wonderful ride, with the exception of this year, which I think everyone's sort of, from what I'm hearing on the call, is sort of feeling some of the same impact. And this is industry wide, right? COVID has really affected TA, and quite frankly, our effectiveness. For each of the organizations that we represent, and D&I being, DE&I becoming one of the most prevalent things that's coming out of this whole COVID thing. And between COVID, quarantine, social movements, I was having a conversation with our chief HR officer via email. I said, quite a year. First quarter, we almost had a war. Then we get quarantine, and now COVID, and now social movements, and it's incredible. And now we have an election coming up, right? Who knows how that's gonna affect what we do. But I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the things that, and what I wanted to talk about was video interviewing and how that's going to impact this industry. And I am an advocate of video interviewing, and I sit on a panel of other senior people within TA organization. I'm sorry about that. It's my 7-year-old. The new reality. Can you turn that down, please? So one of the things that I've been building a business case about, and I've been pumping it up to our global head of TA, is that, and he's a believer. He's just keep building that story, Ed. And some of my counterparts are saying no, maybe not. Some of them are saying yes, but let me dive into it. So during the COVID situation, I was thinking about, okay, TA's industry right now from a talent acquisition is almost at a standstill, right? How can we as a TA organization and my team, how can we be productive and bring relevance to what we do on a day-in-day out basis? And a lot of companies have downsized on their TA, and we've been very, very lucky to have the ability to redeploy resources throughout the organization. But one of the things that came up with was, okay, we've got a lot of jobs that have kind of gone on pause. COVID's really affected, this entire industry. What can we do to move this forward? What can we do to engage candidates? And working through our ATS, which has a video capability, I created a set of questions where I created something called a video handshake, where I can actively go out and invite around specific questions that I put together with the global head, and where we have 5 questions specific to, and these are candidates that, if COVID wasn't a situation, they were applying to our jobs, they were interested in our organization. The next phase of this will be to take it to the next step, where I'm engaging external candidates with the same type of methodology. But let me go into the pilot. So I ran this pilot where I was pushing sort of these questions out to people that were warm to the organization, and they would create a video profile. So I labeled it as a video handshake. It actually got featured on CNBC. where the global head of TAs talked about this pilot, and where we were able to not only meet candidates, but setting the right expectations around COVID, right? You had a lot of people that were home and that had a lot of time on their hands, and it was a great time to engage candidates. So through specific questions and through video, you now have an opportunity to increase velocity, right? So now you have a resume and you have a video profile. I can take those resumes and video profiles that were against specific skill sets. And again, my areas are data science and engineering. I could take those resumes and ship those off to hiring managers. And now you take a traditional, quote unquote, older system of a resume and a write-up, and now you have an introduction that's over video, talking about their skills and why they're interested in the company, depending on how you want to kind of set up the questions. And I started posing the question, and the question was posed to me by my leadership. Are we getting the best people, right? And I started asking, through video, these questions, I'm going to tackle these. Are we building the best, candidate business case to hire? And through video, I was challenged by my team. What can we do even on top of this with diversity? So let me give you some of the response rates. So as I was running the pilot, I got a 45% response rate from candidates, which when you look at LinkedIn and you look at traditional, LinkedIn response rates that Recruiter has, 45% is pretty darn good. And so we started taking it a step further. He said, and my leadership said, well, how can we take your video handshake to the diversity population? And, I started asking questions are we leveraging the right channels, right, to, with video? Do we effectively understand, the available minority talent in the market? How can we identify and remove potential bias, from our recruiting process? These are kinds of questions that started to kind of percolate. And I took it further, and I started to build a case that video will improve retention. Because what will end up happening is that you have population. If we're reaching out to the right people, you're going to start improving retention because people are going to see, their own selves, right? It's going to increase attraction. It's going to gain speed with assessing candidates. You'll have the ability to align customer base, right? Now, through video, you don't have to worry about things like time zone, and maybe, paying for someone to travel in. Everything's done, via like we're doing today. So you're going to increase that geographical reach. You're going to grow that candidate pool. You're going to attract candidates with different backgrounds that you'll be able to recruit in states where you traditionally have not been able to. Now, Group M is technology centric, right? So a lot of the technology companies are trying to decide, well, this new world of work from home, working through video, working in office, what's that going to look like as you start to slice it? And I'll argue the fact that through video, we're going to have the ability to interview people in locations where you've never been able to do before, not have to relocate them, and hire people as long as you have local offices. But that's part of another case that I'm building around remote work. So I won't go down that rabbit hole. But jumping back to video, this is not only, this will assist people with disabilities as well. It's a time saver for them. Less interview fatigue, opportunity to interview from home, ability to focus on the interview. And it'll also allow hiring managers to gain, impressions not possible through phone, right? Body language, communication. You'll be able to see a candidate's energy. Maybe a simple smile that, that comes across through a video. So that benefits us because hiring managers can't close their eyes when you're on a video interview with a candidate. One of the other benefits that a case that I'm building is that you're able to build a consistent recruiting process through specific questions, and you're able to potentially remove bias from that, right? Because if you're building consistency in your questions and through your evaluation, you're going to have that ability to remove the bias, right, from your assessment process. In addition, you'll be able to identify outliers, right? So if you're running certain X amount of video interviews for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you'll be able to pull reporting and identify outliers and identify potential opportunities to educate and identify if you have hiring managers that are presenting specific behaviors, right, that maybe are a little bit more biased towards specific populations. So, so to kind of bring this back, we've been again successful with getting an incredible response rate from the market. We've been able to identify areas where we'll be able to tackle diversity, and we've been rolling out a successful campaign behind video. So that's my argument behind it. I hope it resonates with some.
Absolutely. Ed, are your handshake interviews, are they where it's live with a representative from your company, or are these sort of, I'm going through a set of questions that I'm recording my answers to, and then they go into a library of sort?
Yeah. So let's just say, Sean, let's say if you were a candidate that had applied to a data engineer role open in the organization, and I identified your background as someone that I wanted to get to know. Your resume looks great. I put together 4 to 5 questions around that skill set, particular job, in addition to a question around introducing yourself as well. And you will receive a video that email. You click on it, and you go through the questions. And a candidate, you could go through those questions within 8 minutes. And so they are aligned to specific skill sets. But we create the questions, right? The questions are created by talent acquisition.
Gotcha. And kind of you related to skill set. So you're kind of getting in the weeds a little bit. If I recorded one of those handshake interviews, does that get matched up against a specific rec or some type of an evergreen rec or a pipeline, whatever we want to call it? But is it more the role versus the rec, or is it kind of both, or what is it there?
So it is both. So when I started the pilot, I needed to think of an innovative way to not only track, right, because I wanted to track how many applications I was sending out, but also I wanted to track how many I was getting back, right? So I did both. So within our ATS, we do have the ability to build in a specific video that will be assigned to that job rec, right? In addition, I created a separate rec where I would invite a candidate, and then I would move the candidate into that rec so I can track it myself.
Gotcha. And do you call them evergreens or pipelines or sourcing rec? Everybody's got their own term, it seems.
I actually called it the handshake video. That's what
okay.
I called it. Yeah, because I was the only one out of my TA team, out of the leadership team, that was running this pilot. Each of us we're challenged with bringing innovation to the organization, and one of the things that I pride myself on is bringing innovative ideas, and I'm really passionate about technology and leveraging our ATS to the best of its capability. So,
what ATS do you use, Edward?
Say it again.
What ATS do you use?
We're using JobVite.
Okay, gotcha. And your interviewing tool is within that JobVite suite. Is that accurate?
That's right. So it's video capable. We could you could send out videos in terms of questionnaires. I could set up a video. So for example, what I'll do for everyone here, when we're done, I'll show you my introduction. I'll share the introduction because it's on YouTube, right? We have a YouTube channel as well. So when a candidate clicks on it, it goes straight to the YouTube, and it's me. Hi, my name is Edward Cruz, global lead for data science, and sort of introducing what the process is going to be and why we're doing this, right? The fact that COVID has many of us sitting home, we have a lot of time in our hands. So this is a great opportunity to get to know you, who you are as a candidate, right? So we're not recruiting you today, but when the time is right and we start recruiting again, we're going to have this video profile in addition to your resume to leverage to consider you as a candidate.
I think it's a fantastic way to do it, especially when things start going back to normalcy. I'm guessing there's going to be an abundance of applicant flow to kind of manage the top of the funnel through that process. I think is key. Hey, we're going to jump over to Justin, but Edward, do you think you can drop that link in the chat area?
Sure can.
Right. Justin, you're on mute right now, but we can jump over to you if you're ready.
Yep.
Oh, can't hear you, Justin. Hold on, let me do something hold on one second. Might be in the, 1 second.
That should work now.
There we go, perfect.
Okay. Very good. Well, happy to be on and nice to meet everyone. My name is Justin Delory. I'm Director of Talent Acquisition for Definitive Healthcare for all of about 3.5 days. I started this week on Monday. So, some of what I'm going to talk about is from past experience, but also, what I know is on the docket for us here at Definitive as far as employer branding is concerned. I think everyone on this webinar has probably experienced employer branding in some way, shape, or form. So it's nothing new. But the reason I chose this topic for this conversation is that I think there's more focus, certainly on employer branding now, just the way that the market's shifting and the fact that a lot of millennials are involved in the process now. And as we all know, the easier the better, and anything that can be done mobily is very good for attracting millennials. And everyone identifies with content, and employer branding is a good way to get content out there and control the message that you want to project to your target audience regarding your organization. So I think as far as employer branding is concerned, one of the changes is there are many more technologies out there that can assist in your efforts, which I'll cover here shortly. But it's a very important initiative, in my opinion, to improve your talent pool, enhance the way that you attract that top talent into your organization, and then, of course, improve the candidate experience, enhance it, improve your quality hire, and then those will all, in turn, boost your attrition rates, which is also obviously very important. So, I think the important thing to consider when putting together a strategy around an employer brand is that's often where the candidate experience starts, either through their own efforts or yours. That's their first impression of your organization. So it's important that you put out a message that not only explains and showcases your culture and mission, but also makes it evident that it's an environment that is diverse and inclusive. So much as Catherine spoke about and we all commented on, I think diversity and inclusion, employer branding, and mission of the organization and talent acquisition as a whole all go hand in hand, because the goal for all of them is to improve and add value to the organization. So, I think that's been a bit of a paradigm shift, over the last few years, is that there's a realization that they all do work hand in hand, and that talent acquisition can very much affect the business and vice versa. So it's important that they're all headed down the tracks in the same direction with the same goal in mind. As far as the technology that's out there, there's a lot of it, and it can be a dark hole of sorts. And to a certain extent. So, there's a bit of assessing the risk versus reward. And what I mean by that is you can utilize technology as it's relative to employer branding for data, and analyze the market, configure your target audience, but also measure your outreach, and, whom you're reaching out to, what their response rate is. And the goal is to obviously drive them to your organization, your website, your career site, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of analytics out there via technology that allow you to measure that. The other, to my previous comment, content is something that everyone relates to. So there's a lot of different technologies, whether it's social media or specific platforms and tools for employer branding that allow you to simplify the experience, share the content that you want to control and that you have chosen to bring to the market to advertise your organization. And then it also allows you to build a network One initiative that we have at Definitive is to couple our employer branding strategy and efforts with putting together a talent network, and being able to capture the folks and the work that our recruiters have done already, in one centralized repository, if you will. So, bringing those folks into the organization, again, controlling that message and being able to build that network and catalog it as well. So, to tell you a little bit about Definitive, we've been around for 9 years now, but we're in a rapid growth situation. So employer branding, of course, has been an integral part to the business, but there's really a focus on it now as we move from about 480 employees to somewhere around 1,500, hopefully over these next 2 to 3 years. So it's very much a initiative here, and one that we hold near and dear, and we're putting a lot of time into.
Just a question for you, and I totally get that you're just starting the new gig. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
Is employment branding as a whole, do you kind of, and I've done this before, distinguish between the external branding of your company, like your website or your social media accounts, kind of trying to gather new applicants into your ATS, for lack of better words, right? Make them be aware, make them apply. And then kind of separating, call it affirmation collateral, where once they come in for the interview process and you're moving forward with them, they kind of get a new packet or pieces of collateral in more detail about the company and branding in that respective. Do you do anything like that?
So, to your point, still early on here at Definitive, but what I've learned so far and in my past experience is that they should all be pursued in parallel. And what I mean by that is, the mutual initiative of all is to highlight the mutual needs of the organization and the candidate or employee. So, I think another point to add to your, Sean, is the value prop of the organization as well. So what we're going to be doing here at Definitive, and what I've done in the past, is to make sure that we're viewing and taking a pulse of the collective. So that's candidates, current employees, and past employees, so that you get a holistic view of the whole situation and make sure that everything is hand in hand. I don't think it does a disservice if you have an employer brand that differs from your company mission, that may differ from the actual situation within the organization. They should all be headed in the same direction and be on the same page, I believe.
And does any tool stand out for me? I know that like the CRM world or the sales and marketing world is starting to tread into the recruiting world, or perhaps vice versa. Mm-hmm. Is any tool out there around that stand out?
I'll tread lightly because I know this is going to be put on the LinkedIn. But one that I've used previously and we're engaged with now is Built-in, for example. That is specifically to tailor to the IT and sales folks. But that's a good example of a platform where you're able to push out content, whether that's events or product news or company news. You're able to push a message out to a targeted market, and then they're able to come onto the site as well and find you. So that's a technology and a platform that I found that's been great and has worked hand in hand. The CRM piece and the data and analytics as a whole, I think, is also one that should be run in parallel, because the most important thing is to analyze the data. There's so much data out there, right, that it's at our fingertips, and we should utilize it to be able to make decisions and evaluate the things we've already done. So I found that there's technology on that side of the house, where previously that might have been more of a sales function, is also quite useful.
I just put in the chat session a link to a tool that's built for salespeople I've used in the past before, called Outreach.io. Mm-hmm. Getting back to your point of getting data and joining and trying to do like a drip campaign would be like a typical piece of it, but getting that back, one of the interesting pieces I saw for it, and we used it kind of as an outbound sourcing tool to get people to join our process, or the company process, mm-hmm. is if I can't get you to convert on the first or second outreach to you, my acceptance would go down a cliff, right? If it's the fourth or fifth, you're not interested, and kind of relating back to, okay, I'm not going to target you anymore. I'll wait a year, maybe come back again. But having that information in a tool, I think it just helps out recruiters so much.
I agree. And it's, in recruiting and talent acquisition as a whole, it's important to work smart, not harder, right?
Yeah.
And that's a tool that that can help you in that retrospect.
Yeah, it's still looking for that tool that adds time to the day. Haven't quite
Yes.
found it yet. Maybe later.
That would be great.
Ed or Edward, anything to add to Justin's? Oh, Edward, you're on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I just put into the chat that for those people who are using JobVite, there already is functionality for you to create and analyze marketing outreach to your candidates, whether they're passives or active candidates. It's called Engage. And it's a pretty powerful tool that works just as good as some of our marketing department's tools for email marketing.
Hey, Ed, can I add on to that? If you are a JobVite user, there is a filter that you need to turn on to filter against your tags and your outbound engagement. And if it's not there, you got to request to turn it on. It took me 6 months before I realized, oh, you can do that, because it wasn't turned on. It was this when it was set up, it just wasn't turned on. So highly recommend if you're a JobVite user, make sure that little search against tags, I think is what it is turned on. All right, Ed, let's jump over to you. Your item. Or Ed, we're going to jump to Ed real quick. Sorry.
Oh no, I didn't know which Ed you were talking about.
You're my Edward.
Two Eds are better. Two Eds are better than one.
Okay, go for it.
So, Edward, did you want to finish?
No, I was just going to say you stole my thought. I was going to say, Ed, you stole my thunder with the comment about JobVite having that actually built into the system from a marketing analytics perspective. The Engage piece, it's excellent, actually.
Got it. Yep, we use it. So I was assigned, or I had 3 items listed under my name from Sean's email. And the very first one was employee health is going to become very important in the recruiting post-COVID. There are concerns from people who are expected to come in to work at your facility about what your health policies and procedures are. So you need to be able to have a coherent, consistent, company-wide way of explaining what you do for those facilities to keep your employees safe. And that means not just providing them with PPE like gloves and masks, but also how often you clean the facility, how often you expect the facilities where they are occupying and sharing with other people to be cleaned. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm starting to see the kind of screening questions that facility managers are asking, and that has to do with whether or not candidate has been exposed to COVID. Now, there's probably no guidance yet from the feds or from the state about what you can or can't ask about it, because once you capture PPE, PEI, protected employee information, you've got to be sure that you need to assure your employees and the candidates that you have taken the guidelines to protect that information. But people are asking because if they have to come in for an interview and start working, they need to know whether they're going to pose a risk to the company, or the candidate is going to want to know if they themselves are going to be at risk. So employee health is going to be something that I think we need to focus on. I don't know if anybody has experienced that or any of these concerns yet.
I haven't heard anybody talking about even bringing back large populations back to work. But well, they're going to have to have it, right?
It doesn't have to be large populations. I mean, we've seen facilities in retail or in our line of work where we have production facilities that need to be manned. They can't run large, wide format printers from home, right? So since we're deemed an essential service supporting the construction industry, we have to have people in those facilities. So we've taken steps to provide the cleaning of it, but then there are concerns when you have to interview people for those facilities, things that I mentioned earlier. So that's going to be the next big thing. The other one that was assigned to me was artificial intelligence in recruiting. And looking at the number of requests, people who had requested that topic, I think there was more than a dozen of those requests. And AI has been around in some of the job posting tools out there. It started with programmatic advertising, programmatic placement, but now we're looking at predictive analytics. And there's about 3 companies out there that I'm aware of that provide some kind of AI for sourcing. For those of you that have heard of Eightfold.ai, and the other one is HireTool, Hiretual, and another one is Sensia. These 3 companies have been providing ways to find and source candidates together with their contact information. If you aren't already aware of them, you should go check them out. It's a shameless plug, but I don't get paid for it. It's just that I have been looking at this for a long time. And so when you talk about the predictive analytics, not only will they be able to serve up on a list that you can download into a spreadsheet, much like many of the search firms have been doing, except the search firms in the old days used to have an army of sourcers reading Hoovers and Barron's and D&B reports and then cataloging names and numbers. Well, with these tools, you put in your preferred criteria, and the criteria could be anything from places that you'd rather see them come from, work-wise, titles, tags, skill sets. But what the AI piece will do is provide some kind of processing, natural processing, to see how closely the type of work that these people have been doing matches those tags. So in the old days, when you would search a resume database, you'd simply put in skill sets, tags, if you will, and it would just look for those buzzwords and serve up the candidate. And the candidate may not have been doing the exact work that you want. But these AI tools are now at that stage where they will select out for you those people that come closest to what you're looking for. The next step in that is to do natural language processing, where they can actually crawl the Dun & Bradstreet reports, the Hoovers, the Barron's, and actually read and determine how close these people are to the kinds of problems that the person you're hiring is expected to solve, expected to work on. And that's where the value of the AI is going to be. I don't know if anybody has thought of using predictive analytics that way, or if you know of anybody that actually has natural language processing that can read those things off of not just a resume, but say news reports.
Yeah, Ed, I'll throw this on top of that, kind of going back to Edward's video-based recording. So there's tools out there right now that can translate, right? So if that gets stored in the written form and you have an AI laid over your ATS, to your point, it can look at that spoken word, going back on what was spoken when they're doing their interviews and stuff like that. And in my little dream world here, as you look at the ATS, well, now I have your work history. If I can compare downstream, like as we start to integrate ATSs and HRISs, well, here downstream, this is a really great employee. What's his history? Where was he before he came here? Should we be looking at those people? Oh, we have. He was just a rare entity. The rest of the people aren't really good, or they're fantastic. Kind of getting that applied intelligence or artificial intelligence laid over that.
Yeah.
I've seen HireTool. I've never really seen AI played out in a way that I've been amazed by it. I think we're still in those early phases, but it's certainly interesting. I put a link in the chat. Have you ever heard of AlphaGo? I think the company's called DeepMinds. Google owns them. They created kind of like, you remember when Watson played Jeopardy? They created a tool, an AI tool to play the game Go. If you've never seen the game Go, it's kind of really hard to explain. But they did a documentary on the DeepMind's effort to create this AlphaGo, which went and played Go and beat the world's champion in this game, which is supposed to be far more complex than chess. If you got time, there's a fantastic documentary free on YouTube. I put that link in there. But to me, that gives kind of to your point, Ed, around applied thought coming back. This tool that they came up with, they talk about how it learns as it goes, which is both interesting and scary. But I think if you can start to apply that to candidates, both externally for those to go after and as they're coming through, when we get into AI, that'll be certainly interesting. And to your point, that was by far the biggest bucket of what's coming in recruiting was AI.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say the AI piece. I'm on mute. The AI piece that we're looking at, is around job descriptions, and pulling out the specific language to try to make our JDs gender neutral, right? And not a lot of companies. I mean, there are some that, a couple, maybe 2 or 3 that I found that are very good. I do think AI has a place, but the human element, I have to say, and maybe I'm just a little, maybe I'm biased, right? But I love AI. I love the technology. I'm an advocate for it, but there's just something about connecting with people that I think will not be lost, or will be needed, when it comes to the TA space. I think when it's too much automation, if you remember years ago, I mean, you call into your credit card and all you get is an automated system, right? I want to talk to a live person. I mean, there's some things that AI, automation's good for, but then there's the argument against. I really want to talk to someone that's human. I really want someone that's human looking at my stuff. So I think that the AI is great, but there'll always be that argument against, right? And having that human element.
I don't think anybody's saying that AI is going to replace the actual interview. I think what AI is currently being used for in talent acquisition is in the sourcing piece, in the posting piece, where you are best going to find people who will read your job post. And that's the programmatic piece, programmatic advertising. And then there's the predictive analytics for the sourcing. And like I said, back in the day when search firms charge you a lot of money to give you a spreadsheet of names, titles, companies, contact information, all of that can now be produced using some of these AI tools that I mentioned.
That's awesome.
I think I'm with you on that. It's not going to hire people. I do think it's going to be a great tool. Add to your point, the external and targeting. I think at the top of the funnel, if you are doing your job with branding, you're getting a lot, and you got a great company, a lot of people want to work there, your funnel goes like this, right? Or it's kind of very wide at the top. Mm-hmm. Helping the recruiters with that, to find those diamond in the roughs, to within that, is a part of that whole combination of all the tools that are going on. That's where I think it's interesting. I've seen some tools in the past where they match the job description up the resume. Here are your top candidates. And they would get 3 or 4 good people, and then about 45, no, why would you say this? Yeah. And then recruiters never came back and used it again. So it's like, yeah, I can understand why you wouldn't waste your time. Excellent. We're a bit over. Thank you guys for staying on. I really appreciate it. We could probably keep talking what's coming in recruiting for quite a long time. Any last items to add? No? Good. All right. Thanks again, you guys. We'll call that a day. Enjoy the rest of your day and your upcoming weekend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.